take some of the people up here who are pretty unknown before coming to the platform, right? Is there a world where that person should kick back some of those profits or kick back some of that to this platform because this platform is pretty much the platform that gave them the light in the beginning?
Did that person sign a 360?
But do you see a world where the person should be able to come back and say, hey, you know, you're doing pretty well in this brand. A big part of why your brand is this because I've given you that level of exposure. You should kick some back.
No.
Joe Budden and his co-hosts dive into a heated debate about whether they actually owe Joe a cut just for being part of the podcast. Yeah, you heard that right. Hold up. Joe and the crew start breaking down what responsibility, if any, they have to pay him back for giving them a platform that boosted their visibility. Now listen to this. This whole convo pops up right after Joe Budden showed up on MySpace alongside Mark Lamont Hill, so the timing feels real strategic. Some of the cast, though, weren't fully rocking with it, with Imani especially calling it out as a bit crazy. He admitted he heard it and didn't like it at first. But you already know the pattern with Imani, and this is where it gets interesting. He'll say he's bothered by something, then circle back later like, nah, I get it now, almost like he's trying not to step on toes. Meanwhile, Joe lays it out straight. He believes, at least in theory, the cast should be kicking something back because the podcast can turn nobodies into somebodies. And he wasn't being vague either. He specifically pointed at names like Ice, Flippy, Manny. Yeah, he meant that. You won't believe this, but here's the
podcast is that big of a platform. It's in that conversation. The podcast can take an unknown and set him straight for the rest of his life. Like, it has that ability. All of the big companies that have that ability, they go in with that type of thinking, and then it's up to the talent to do the carve-outs. Like, that's in the negotiation. But yeah, I mean, you could. I don't, and wouldn't, because like I want people to eat. I want my money. I don't want nobody else.
After all that, Joe Budden jumps on Spaces, no recording, but I was there, and suddenly starts saying that's not what he meant, which already sounds shaky. But hold up, I'm not buying that, because he clearly framed it like the podcast is massive, like he's the one creating stars and lifting people up through the show. That kingmaker angle hit a nerve though, and it felt like Joe didn't like how that sounded out loud, so now he's trying to walk it back. In this episode, he's kind of dancing around the topic, not saying it straight, but dropping hints that we definitely need to unpack. Listen to this, because this is where it gets real. Let's actually break it down properly. You gotta remember, Spaces is what lit this whole thing up in the first place. That platform has a crazy level of influence on the podcast now, way more than people realize. Twitter Spaces, basically a social audio feature that Twitter rolled out after the Clubhouse wave, has been shaping conversations around the show heavy. Ever since people started hosting discussions about the Joe Budden podcast on there, it's been driving narratives that sometimes even make their way into the actual episodes. And yeah, this situation is another example of that exact thing happening in real time. The core question was simple, but wild. If someone blows up while on the Joe Budden podcast, do they owe Joe a percentage? At first, that sounds insane, but if you look at shows like Love and Hip Hop, or even setups like The Howard Stern Show, there are contracts and restrictions that control how talent can move. For example, if you pop off from Love and Hip Hop, there's talk that you might owe something back. And with Howard Stern, a lot of his cast can't freely do outside content or interviews. That's a completely different vibe compared to Joe's podcast, where his co-hosts have way more freedom to branch out and do their own thing. Now here's where it gets interesting. Joe says he'd never put those kinds of restrictions on his cast because he wants everybody eating. You won't believe this, but I'm calling cap on that, because nobody on that pod has actually gotten big enough yet to test that claim. Think about it. What happens if someone really blows up? Like, imagine a Cardi B level rise happening right there on the show. That changes everything overnight. People forget how fast things can flip. Just because Ice, Flip, or Imani aren't on that level now doesn't mean they can't catch fire tomorrow. What if Flip and Kai link up and start streaming daily and go crazy viral? Or Imani ends up doing a debate series with Usher after catching his attention online? Those are the kinds of moves that could realistically make someone bigger than Joe himself. And that's the real point. Joe's whole everybody should make money stance hasn't been stress tested yet. That's the quiet part nobody's saying out loud. It's easy to preach fairness when you still control the entire situation. Another moment that stood out was Joe claiming people aren't on the show just because they're his friends. And shout out to Flip because he called that out immediately and basically said, nah, that's not true. Let's be real.
Friends. I know that's said a lot and it's common. Your man got here because nobody is still here because we friends. We passed the friendship. I'm out of the friendship game.
You say that.
I'm out of the friendship game.
You say that a lot, but I don't.
I know you don't believe that.
I don't believe.
And honestly, that's facts. There are people on that show, and yeah, I'm gonna say it, I really question if they'd even be there without their connection to Joe Budden. I also doubt they'd have that same level of freedom if they weren't tied to him or hadn't helped him out behind the scenes. It's gotten to a point where when Joe Budden defends certain cast members, he'll say stuff like, they're a good person or they're easy to talk to, but never actually praises their performance on the podcast. That right there, that's a red flag. No, seriously, that's a red flag. Because let's be real, it's way more valuable to be known for what you bring to the mic than for being a nice guy who can do favors. Another layer to this, Joe talks like that because these guys are on contracts that benefit his current setup. Back when Rory Farrell and Jamil Mao were there, it was a different story entirely. They were profit partners, meaning they had access to the books, expenses, and all the behind-the-scenes numbers. And yeah, that situation didn't last, and we all saw how that ended. So let's not play. If Ice, Flip, or Imani ever reach a point where their contracts don't favor Joe anymore, things could switch up real quick. But right now, that's not an issue because they're on salary-based deals. From what it looks like, they're getting paid per episode, like a set fee every time they show up. And let's keep it real, not all contracts are created equal either. People with prior industry experience probably negotiated better terms than those who didn't. So someone like Flip or even Melissa Ford might be sitting in a stronger position contract-wise compared to others like Ice or Imani, but we'll see how that plays out. Now hold up, because this next part is something a lot of creators don't talk about enough. Bringing people onto your platform can get real tricky real fast. I've seen it myself. You have to think ahead and ask, if I put this person on, how are they going to move? Are they going to act like the views are all because of them, or will they understand the platform is what's really driving the numbers? And listen to this. Sometimes they'll grab comments from online and flip the narrative to make it seem like they had a bigger impact than they actually did. That right there creates tension every single time. Every content creator with a growing platform runs into this at some point. It's inevitable. It doesn't matter if it's someone random from Twitter Spaces or someone already in entertainment. They can all come in with expectations. Some even start thinking they deserve equity or a bigger slice just for showing up. And that's when you sit back like, hold up, where is this coming from? Because not everyone actually adds measurable value. That's why this conversation matters, and even Flip touched on it when he brought up his situation with Shampoo. He basically said Shampoo wanted more money, but Flip checked him like, you're not pulling these numbers without me. The room pushed back a little, but I'm not gonna lie, Flip had a point there. If someone can't replicate the same views on their own, are they really moving the needle for your platform? Are they bringing in ads or just benefiting from what's already built? At the end of the day, you eat what you kill. And the truth is, most people don't actually elevate a platform by themselves. When someone does though, trust me, you'll see it instantly in the metrics that actually matter. But let me know what you think about all this. Because at the core, this whole situation circles back to Joe Budden and what he said on Spaces. He basically implied that being on his podcast makes people more relevant or hot, and that clearly rubs some people like Imani the wrong way. So the topic made its way back onto the show where others seemed to agree, but nobody really pushed it all the way. And you won't believe this, they never fully addressed the real question head on. Joe stayed kind of quiet on that specific point, like he didn't want to go there. But imagine if someone had pressed him and said, so you're saying this platform makes nobodies into somebodies. Are we nobodies? That would have taken the conversation to a whole different level. Instead, it felt like they avoided that uncomfortable truth. And that's my issue. They're not fully leaning into the tough conversations. But hey, we'll see how this plays out moving forward. With that said, make sure you tap in with me on Instagram, follow me on Patreon, and don't miss the second channel, Quiet Part Out Loud. We've got interviews up already and a lot more content on the way.